In this special Cleanfax report, today I'm with Peter Crosa, an independent insurance adjuster and a good friend who has extensive experience in disaster situations, anything that involves restoration and the insurance industry. And with Hurricane Ian coming ashore to the United States and especially Florida, it brought a situation that the industry will be struggling with for months and years to come. So, Peter, welcome. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. Good morning. Very well. Yes, we dodged a bullet here in St. Petersburg.
Yes. So you are in Florida right now in your home, St. Petersburg. I see everything looks intact. So I'm glad for you for that. But can you share your thoughts right now and what's happening, what's going on in Florida?
Sure. Well, let me tell you what I was thinking before the storm. So it's a counterclockwise swirl, and I knew that if it hit Cuba, it would hit us on the Gulf Coast of Florida. If by chance it missed Cuba, the way it was spinning, it was going to go out into the Gulf and not be a severe threat. But it sure did. It hit Cuba and came right to the Fort Myers area, which is about an hour, maybe 120 miles south of where I am now. We had some strong winds here in St. Petersburg, but nothing like what happened down there. And we had some water. It was light rain. We had no flooding up here. We're 50 feet above sea level. Fort Myers is 10 feet above sea level. So it was not a good situation. I have a friend, or one of my brethren in the National Association of Independent Insurance Adjusters, who's based in Fort Myers. He says it is a war zone. It's unrecognizable. It's devastating, and so it's as bad as we could have imagined.
We see the news and we watch it on our TVs, we hear it, the audio versions, the reports, but you're there and you see what's going on. Your news is probably more intense and you have your connections there. So just how bad is it now that assessment has started? That's underway. What do you see as far as the recovery there?
Well, let me tell you this, some statistics on it. So there already, as of October 6th, which was 3 days ago, there were 360,000 claims filed. And many people down there don't have infrastructure. Their cell phones aren't even working. So you can expect that there's going to be another several 100,000 claims filed over the next 2 to 4 weeks. A lot of money involved. The insurance industry estimates about $40 billion in damages. And it's hard to say this early into the game. So we have very difficult time getting to the risks that we're involved with. We have a zoo that's covered with water. Actually, the animals are okay, but the entrance, the surrounding entrance to the zoo is not passable. So we can't get in there to make an assessment. We've got a baseball field that's being used as a staging ground by the National Guard, and they're not allowing entrance to the baseball park. And then we have one thing that I can think of, a bowling alley that was totally destroyed, buried in water. And there's also a elder care facility that's about 800 acres right in the path of where it hit. 7,000 residents, 1,000 employees taking care of these people. These people had no power for about a week and a half. They did have a special shelter on the premises, but they've been devastated. But the silver lining in the cloud, so to speak, is the amazing care that people took, the employees took, to stay and protect the elderly, especially those that were in memory care, very vulnerable. Many of them were independent living type elders, but they actually started a GoFundMe page because many of the employees themselves were destroyed. Their properties were destroyed, and they're in quite a bit of hurt right now. I'll be going there this week to do a walkthrough, and they've had 400 buildings, separate buildings, insured. Many of them insured by flood, and some of the damage was flood because of the water rise, not necessarily wind. And the problem there is that there are limitations on FEMA's flood program. So the max you can get on a residential dwelling is $250,000. So if you've got a $400,000 building, which doesn't take much in Florida in today's environment, you've really got a lot of hurting people there as far as the financial consideration goes.
You know, Peter, we get upset when our power goes out or our internet flickers. Put it in perspective for us, a little bit more detail there.
Well, fortunately, I didn't suffer that this time, although I did grow up in Florida and I've experienced that before in times past. Our power never went out at my house here, and we had no flooding. But when you're in that scenario, after a while, you can't even get you can't get water out of the faucet that you can be safe with. So you better have supplies of water. If you're trapped by flood in your home, you know how desperate that scenario can get. Many people were mandatory evac, but they didn't leave.
Mm.
They were under mandatory evac and didn't leave. And so rescue services are having a hard time getting to people, or did have a hard time at this point. We're a week out from now. But it's dire because all of your foodstuffs are going to go bad for the most part. Anything you had in the fridge or refrigerator, you can't go down to the 7-Eleven and buy supplies, or Publix to get more supplies. Everything is shut down. So it's dire. It's third world type epidemic type situation.
Mm-hmm. And during all this, restoration professionals are converging on Florida from all over the country, those storm chasers that come to help, whether it's re-roofing or rebuilding or just drying out a structure. Talk, Peter, if you would, about the recovery effort. What do you see going smoothly and what won't go smoothly? And of course, this will take months and years.
Yeah, none of it's going smoothly right now. There's actually one of my team captain there. He was there a few days after the event, and he saw no contractors. There was nobody there. Nobody could get there. And this guy's coming up from Miami, and he's the kind of guy that can sleep in his pickup truck in the back, and he'll pitch a tent, and he's got his own supplies and everything. And that's what a lot of these CAT adjusters do, that type of thing. But nobody could get there. There's no contractors, and now it's slowly starting to populate, and you're seeing that there. But they're covered up, and then there are losses not only from Fort Myers, but all the way up through Florida into Central Florida, up to the eastern seaboard there to some extent. I'm not sure how far north it went because after it hit here, I wasn't paying that much attention to what happened up there. But it's a mess. It's an organizational mess that will slowly subside, and people will get their bearings, and materials are short. This bowling alley I mentioned, they would like to get air conditioners back up on the roof right away to keep their operation going. You can't get any air conditioners anywhere. Everything's on order. So and we already had supply and material issues before this happened. So that's going to be a serious problem.
Sure.
And of course, the most important thing is preservation of life, and that's what everybody's focused on. And there's a lot of great examples of heroic stories and kindness by one person to another, which is exemplary and commendable.
Yeah, and that's nice to see, the humanity part of it, taking care of others, doing what's right. And we do know human life is most important.
Absolutely.
Of course, the focus is to getting back to normal as well. So there's that. Peter, my last question, I want to talk about the insurance industry in Florida. We see changes over recent years, maybe limitations on coverage for some claims. Any comments on that?
It's an interesting discussion that goes on down here. And of course, the insurance industry blames it on the litigiousness of the Florida legal system, lawyers here and public adjusters here. So, for example, Florida homeowners coverage accounts for about 20%, maybe even somewhere between 15 and 20% of the nationwide homeowner claims. But it accounts for 80% of the lawsuits in homeowner claims in the whole country. So to give you an idea of the litigious environment. So the industry points to that and says, well, we can't do business here. There's just too much litigation. Every claim is challenged, and you have to wonder what brought that about. There's a public adjuster on every corner, so to speak, and it's not uncommon that you're going to get a public adjuster They can advertise, they solicit for business. And what happens when you get a public adjuster on a claim? And I'm not going to demean the whole group, but they'll write 10 times whatever you write. If you write a $100,000 estimate, they're going to write 10 times that. It's going to be $1 million estimate. And you'll be hard pressed to justify $1 million on a particular claim, or even if it's 1,000 and they write 10,000, you know. So it's that kind of battle every single time. There are some very competent and highly ethical public adjusters in Florida, but it just creates an environment, an adversarial environment. So the companies find the Florida territory very hostile. A lot of companies have pulled out. A lot of companies who stayed were sort of subpar companies anyway, and many of them have filed for bankruptcy and are under watch of the state, and there's sort of a probationary type situation. So it is a dire situation. Citizens is the insurer of last resort. They have some stringent limitations on their policies that so many of your readers may have encountered if they're out there trying to do mold remediation or water mitigation and so on. So there is no solution. The legislature, tries to make an effort at it. Lobbyists try to make an effort to resolve it. And I don't know. I don't have any answers myself. I know that it's very adversarial. That contributed to the whole thing, and companies don't want to be here. So it's difficult.
A challenging situation for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And the ones suffering are those homeowners and business owners with buildings that need to be restored and brought back to use.
The widow Brown. Nobody's looking out for her.
Okay. You are, Peter.
Yeah, well, I have no power.
No. Well, Peter, thank you for this today, and just bringing some perspective on what's going on in Florida after Hurricane Ian hit.
Okay, my pleasure. Good talking to you as always.